Hey everybody, it's Elliot Brood, working from home again. We're here with our new friend Jen Boyne, who you can see in Steve's background there, helped us with new projects. We've been a band since 2002, so this is our 20-year anniversary, believe it or not. And we decided to get some clothes made for us. So the person who helped us do that is Jen Boyne, and she's up there in the corner. Jen, why don't you introduce yourself and I don't know, tell us a bit about how you got into doing these crazy projects.
Um, it's one of those things. It's just like a slow happening story, bit by bit. I've been sewing my whole life. I have a degree in interior design. That wasn't working. Had some kids. That worked, I guess, for a while. I opened a shop a few years ago, and my custom work took over. So I just sort of closed up my expensive store, moved home, and was doing custom work. And I had a musician friend who asked me to make him a suit a few years ago, and it just took off. And I've had request after request ever since, and it's just dreamy, really. I still can't believe this is what I get to do.
And that guy was Willie Stratton, right?
Willie Stratton.
Yeah,
He's a good friend, incredible musician, good guy, great style.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
So good.
Yeah, we just did a run with him in the fall while things were open. We did obviously get to play with him for a few nights, and it was pretty great. So it's weird to the small world connections with all this stuff. But yeah, the work is obviously beautiful. And how did it? So how did you get into the like sort of the Western style suits and the music stuff you're doing? I guess with him, he was the first one.
He was really the first one. He introduced me to all of this kind of work and to the original nudie suit. It was sort of a new world for me. I mean, I've seen the suits around and on Elvis and Dolly and Hank Snow and all these other big guys, and it's just each suit is just such a work of art. It's just incredible. And when I made Willie's, I actually modified a vintage suit that he had, and I just realized then it was just way too much work ripping apart vintage pieces. So I just make all of my suits now in shirts from scratch.
Yeah.
And custom, so they fit properly. And then you can have them to last. Because if you do a vintage suit, sometimes they're not like in the greatest shape.
Right.
And it's a lot of work to put on something if it's not going to last, another 50 years. So I just prefer to make everything custom.
Yeah, and you say, I think we talked a little bit about this. You originally started out doing, I mean, you've done design and different things, but you were doing gymnastics costumes and some figure skating stuff?
I was. And so all of that sort of design and applique stemmed from doing those kind of like that kind of work. And I'm not really doing those suits anymore just because I love doing the full suits and the Western wear. And it just is like the perfect fit. I just love it. I love it.
Explain stuff for people, applique, because I didn't know what it was. So maybe you can kind of like let us in on what that actually is specifically.
So original nudie suits use a special machine, and they call it a chain stitch. And so I've chosen to do a different style, I guess, which is applique. And so Steve has his shirt on that you can see. And so I draw everything out, and it's transferred to like a satin material, and then it's all cut out, and then it's transferred again. It's sewn back onto like the actual shirt or jacket, whatever fabric I'm using. And so it's quite a process. It takes a long time, and it's very tedious. It can't be done by machine. It's all done by hand. And I cut out, fabric when I'm hanging out with my kids, and I'm dyeing fabric on the stove while I'm making dinner. And it's just like around the clock bits and pieces, and it just, eventually comes together.
It's like songwriting a little bit, but it sounds harder.
Maybe it's harder on my hands.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously beautiful. You can see an example when we will have photos of our individual things, but it's quite a process. And you did it pretty fast, to be honest. It seemed like you turned them around. Maybe you just,
I turned yours around pretty fast.
Yeah, you did.
But
I was amazed.
Yeah, it's literally around the clock. And so I actually have, like, Mark, this is what's on the back of yours, but it all starts out, with literally a pencil sketch. Oh yeah, on that one, Steve, behind you.
Okay.
And then Casey, here's yours.
Yeah.
But it all has to be drawn to scale, and then it's all traced a couple times, and then it's ironed on and cut out. So it's a big process.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing is, I'm so thankful that you kind of reached out to us, like right at the beginning. I think it was like just at the beginning of the pandemic, and we're just like, yes, we want to do suits, but like we're not going anywhere anytime soon. And then everything started to roll and then stop again as stop and start. But it's just like, I'm glad we went for them. I mean, for me, they're extremely personal. I think for all of us, actually, for Casey, Steve, and myself, I think we all drew on personal things, and you kind of like drew them to a T and pulled it off amazingly. So,
well, Mark, we had a bit of a longer process with yours.
We did.
Had to sort of go back to the drawing board a few times and recreate it. But the whole point of these suits, and even if it's just a shirt or a pair of pants, that they tell a story. They're not meant to be worn by anybody else. Like Mark, your suit is for you. Steve, in case like they are meant for you, and they're not meant to be on anybody else.
I like you said in the original sort of design phase when we were back and forth. Like if you were to get a tattoo, think of it that way. Which I only have one from when I was like 17 and pretty drunk, and it's not a great tattoo. But if I were to get something, it's a great way to think about these things. Is like it's yours, and like you said, no one. Maybe my kid one day will wear it if he grows up into it, but that's it. So it's
that's okay. But
that's fine. Yeah, bloodlines.
Well, I think it's personal, right? It's very personal. Yes. Like for myself, my grandmother had just passed in November, and then you kind of just, I think with with the pandemic, it's been more nostalgic. Like I'm nostalgic anyways, and so it's been more nostalgic. And it's just like, okay, it's my grandparents' farm, or the feeling of their farm and the feeling of hanging out. Like that's why, for me personally, I picked the red-winged blackbirds and the cattails and all of that stuff. The little farm. It's like, yes, it's not a rendition. It's not the perfect drawing of their farm, but it's more like the perfect idea of what it made me feel like. So I think you nailed it for me. So, yeah.
And that's the thing. I try to sort of encourage people to think of like their favorite things and their favorite color, their favorite car, their favorite animal, whatever. Because I want it really to tell a story. And I've had clients say to me like, "Oh, you just do it," and I'm like, "No, because." I don't know you. And so let me get to know you. So it's a really neat process also to go through, like to get to know you guys. And it was really fun because we all had, FaceTime chats, and like Mark, we helped you with measurements, and, Steve, you and I had a great conversation about the tree in your backyard. And that's, what we designed your shirt and pants around, which I still love your pants so much.
I've got them on right now.
Do you? Oh, you do?
I'll show you. But I did want to say, Jen, too, like my wife's a jeweler and she makes custom stuff too, but it's very hard at times to get it to bridge that gap in communication because we're not clothing designers.
Right.
And, and I hear that on my wife's side too, like, oh, they want me to make a ring that's humanly impossible to make. Oh, isn't that nice? And you probably get that a lot, and you have to kind of dumb it down for us sometimes and say, well, you can or can't do that or whatever. Do you find that happen?
Just because the process I use with the applique, I can only do so much super tiny details. So we do have to simplify. Sometimes people send me a drawing and I'll sort of resketch it or redraw it and send it back and say like, this is actually what I can do. And 9 times out of 10, they've been fine with it. It works out really well. But it's material limitations too that you have to be aware of and know what you can and can't create.
Well, it's kind of interesting, just bridging the gap in between. Sorry, you want to keep going there, Steve?
I was just going to say, having a possible project coming up for you. So.
Oh, I love a good challenge. All right.
The only thing that I was going to say is like it's bridging the gap between like the vernacular that you would use and that we would use to describe something. You know what I mean? Like we have to kind of get into your world, you have to get into ours and be like, okay, these are the things that we're looking at and looking for. So it's like, I think you're a great communicator, and I think it worked so well. Like that's the one thing, is just like everything was super smooth, even though we went back to the drawing board a few times because I've never had a tattoo. And I was like, I don't know if I can like commit to
commit. You have to commit.
Like, am I committing to this? And the whole thing is, I think your last drawing, which became the final drawing, was like, I sat with it for a bit longer and I was like, and then once you come to it, you're like, oh no, that is the drawing. That is the thing. And then once it shows up, you're like, of course that's the thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was. And so, yeah.
But the back and forth is fun too. I also like to be challenged, and I love to be sort of taken in different directions, and it pushes me and challenges me in a way too. So I love the fact that you and I It took us a couple days to sort of nail it down, but that's also part of the fun.
Yeah, it's wild that we can do this online. We never had met you in person to do this, and then we finally got to meet you afterwards. But it wasn't like walking into Nudi's shop and doing it right there. You know,
No,
we
and
luckily
that's,
could do it.
It always seems to work out okay. Like Case, I think you, Stephen, did your measurements okay, right? But Mark, you and I did some sort of FaceTime, right? Am I dreaming?
Mine had to be take. But
I have no idea. But no, it all seems to work okay online and through FaceTime or whatever. So
it was brilliant, actually. I think we nailed, like, it's such a hard to do that online and actually nail it the first time. So, you know what I mean? Like, kudos to you for doing that, for sure.
For me, the first text that you sent me with the drawings, I was like, that's amazing. You just nailed it. So it was very easy to kind of work, you know, to get my concept through. I guess you nailed it.
Thank you.
As well, though, like Casey's was like, whoa, like that's, you know,
it's a little intimidating to even wear it, I'll be honest. But it is, they are beautiful. And just before we get into the individual ones, who else have you been working with lately, or have you had some favorite projects? I know it's like everyone else in this business, slowing down a little bit because shows are not happening. So, you know.
Yeah, it is. So I just sent off a dress to Tammy Nielsen, who's an incredible artist. She's from Toronto but lives in New Zealand. And so I made her a really beautiful turquoise suit with peaches and crowns and cool stuff all over it. And then I just made her a dress and sent it to her that she just received. And it's so nerve-wracking sending suits across the world because it takes like 3 weeks. And so I sort of sit back and go, please make it, please make it. And when I take them to the post office, they're like, do you want insurance? And I'm like, nope, because if it gets lost, it's done. You can't replace it.
Exactly.
Like, it's just gone. So and she's just incredible. So, you know, it was a joy to work with her. I've sent and I just sent 2 wedding suits off to Australia, which I can't post yet because the wedding hasn't happened.
Yeah, the reveals are a thing, right? I'm sure a lot of artists, even with us, like, don't show pictures yet because we're going to wear them at some point and reveal them, kind of thing. It's an important thing too, right?
It is hard. And I don't know if you saw, I just sent a very cool satin shirt to Arizona, which I basically blew my first ever deadline. And so instead of sending it to Toronto, I had to send it all the way to Arizona overnight, which was a bummer, but it made it.
Cool.
How does it work to work with satin? Is it...
It's a bit trickier, and it doesn't hold the applique as well because it's so much lighter as a fabric, but it turned out beautifully.
Satin's like the devil.
Suit.
A whole satin
wait
suit.
to try it.
Right, or velvet. Come on, guys.
I have one quick question for you too before we go individual. Is there an item that you put on most, like horseshoes or roses? Is there something that people always want because of like the tradition of these suits? You know what I mean? Like, is there something you find stands out a lot that you get asked for a lot?
Roses are big.
Yeah.
And cacti.
Mm-hmm.
Cacti. They're big.
Yeah.
Everyone wants the cacti. Steve, did you say poppies?
Poppies.
I did a suit with poppies
Good.
a couple years ago, but that hasn't been a recurring one.
Right.
Some of the stuff that you have done where you've done sci-fi stuff, I'm like, I wish I was more of a sci-fi guy so I could get like spacecraft and UFOs and stuff like that. But it's like,
the suit I made for Crown Lands was just incredible. Like the detail that we put on to that suit was pretty awesome. And that one had like cool space stuff on it, but it is neat. And I love everyone's ideas. Like everybody comes with a completely different request, I guess. And then I have other people being like, can you make me that one? And I'm like, no. Like I never ever want to make I will never obviously copy anything. Like anything I make is, you know, one of a kind.
Funny enough, we played our last show before we shut down again in St. John.
Right.
This girl's like, I love your pants with the cattails. I'm gonna get her to make the exact same pants for me.
No.
Oh no. I said, I thought you might. I was just like, oh yeah, go for it.
No, not happening.
There'll be an H&M.
I could make them differently, but I would never
Yeah.
Because it's your story. Those are your pants. They're not meant for anybody else.
That's pretty nice, actually.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.